Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Loki. A great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I love the opening, so we find out, for one, that obviously out of anyone, because the question then becomes like, well, now that we know everyone's a variant, it's like, well, who's in know about it? And it seems like Ravonna Renslayer is, because we find out, wait, she was a hunter, and she came, because I didn't know there was I was like, is there a promotional system to this? Like, how'd you go from being a hunter to a judge? Like, because they made it seem like, no, whatever your job is, you're stuck there. So how the hell did you become a judge? So, well, she might have killed her way to that position. We'll have to find out. But she's the one that captured the original Loki, but, you know, who is now Sylvie, ended up capturing her, and then she ended up escaping. So she's been on a... So when she says, like, she's been planning this for years, I thought she was just planning it. I didn't know you were... Man, you've been on a run since you were a kid. That's actually really sad. Like, her entire world was deleted and everything. And obviously for her, she's bouncing, you know, she was constantly on the run, constantly, like, any changes she made, anytime she popped into a timeline, she was creating a Nexus event, so they, you know, forever being on the run until she stumbled across, wait, they can't find me in apocalypses. That's the saddest thing. She even brings it up. That's a super sad line of like, right, I had to watch my world, basically my world was deleted. It was erased. And now basically I found sanctuary at the end of thousands of worlds. That statement was super depressing because it's like, you can't go back home. And even if you did, you can't stay there long, and any world you go to, it's a world you're hiding out in, and so that means that world, you're literally bouncing from death to death to death to death to death, like tons of death, because it has to be an apocalyptic element, it has to be an apocalyptic level event for you to stay hidden from the TVA, you know? Knowing that. And that's the sad thing too, is like, Loki got to live his entire life, Sylvie didn't. She's like, I remember a little bit of Asgard, a little bit of my friends and stuff like that, but it's like, right, like, you see now, like, this Sylvie had it rougher. Yeah, Loki had his issues, but this Sylvie had it rough. You know, it's like, at least, yeah, his mom might be going, but at least he got to know her over the years and stuff like that. So that's why she was like, damn, that's crazy. That's depressing at the same time. But we cut back to, like, Mobius at this, like, the moment, like, Ravonna visited the Timekeepers, I was like, now we know a lot of this is complete malarkey, but, like, what do we know? Like, is that, because that could be potentially BS, so it was like, I don't know what to make of that, you know, her visiting the Timekeepers. Then she comes and tells Mobius, and she's lying, she's like, oh, what about C20? Yeah, C20, yeah, she couldn't even speak a word. I'm like, yep, your main tier cover-up. I'm like, I don't know why you're doing this, but you're covering everything up, because C20 could potentially infiltrate, like, infest everyone else with the virus of that is known as the truth, because even Mobius saying, she said it's real, because the moment Sylvie touched her, like, got inside her head, yeah, but she remembers everything. It's like, wait, I actually remember that, because, you know, that is the interesting thing about memories, too. Like, one memory can lead to another memory, which can lead to a chain of memories, you know? Once again, bringing it back to that. What else did I reference chain of memories for? I don't think it was Loki. It was something else I referenced chain of memories for. I don't remember. Regardless. Maybe it was Loki. I don't know. Regardless, I thought that was so interesting. I think that potentially is how that worked. Or maybe that one nugget was enough to kind of send you being like, well, because obviously you're under depression. Wait. I'm supposed to have just been created. So how do I have a life past the TVA? So just that one memory, it may not have unlocked a chain of memories, but that one was enough. That nugget of memory was enough to be like, wait, this is some BS. This isn't right, you know? And so, but the fact is that Ravonna is like, yeah, you got to keep this on the down low about what happened to C20, because we don't want people to panic and stuff. I'm like, wow, you are trying to reel in as everything comes falling down. Something I didn't even think about last episode, and it should have crossed my mind, because I was like, at the end, I was like, oh, maybe Mobius and them can find her. But it wasn't until after the episode I was like, right, it's an apocalypse. That's the whole point of the apocalypse, is they can't be found, because also there's a multitude of apocalypses, so how would you know which one to look for? Because there's a ton across the timeline. So it's that, like, unless something sparked that. But in that moment, it's like, this is their end, and in that moment they're touching each other, and it creates a very unique branch in the time. Like, normally, like, the lines are like white and they kind of go angularly. This one turned into a spike. It kind of went straight up, and it was orange-ish. So it's like, that's how they were able to eventually track them down. And it was so interesting because B-15 was like, we got to find them. I was like, man, you were really determined about this and everything. But then immediately later on, she has a conversation. She was like, so what did that Loki tell you? And it's like, oh, that the TVA is lying to us. She's like, why? She's like, I'm just doing my job. It's not till later on I was like, right. Sylvie got inside of your mind like she did C-20. B-15 remembers now. She knows, like, she got, moment she was enchanted, she remembered her past. I was like, whoa. So obviously, at the very end, it was close, but luckily, the time, Mobius and the others grabbed them in time to pull them off of Lamentus. It's still kind of sad because it's like, right, there's no saving that world. Once again, I guess it's just one of those things where it's a fixed point in time. There's no changing that. There's no saving anyone. That's always a sad part of time travel stuff, is knowing that no matter what you do, there are just sadly some points in time that can't necessarily be broken, that they have to stay the way they are. They are just fixed points in time. You know what's also interesting too? Because it's almost like, now that we've broken this down, that like the TVA is kind of BS, it's like, so all that stuff about the Avengers doing what they were supposed to do is BS too, right? Because once again, like, why is it Loki's like, no, why am I being called out? Why not the Avengers? He brought that up in episode 1. Now it makes you go, doesn't that make it all BS then? It's like, I don't know, man. It makes you question everything we've come to know at this point in time. But Sylvie and Loki were separated, and Mobius is upset because for him it's like, we're partners, we're actually friends. I actually kind of let my guard down and thought we were friends, and you betrayed me, but even before Loki got sent away, he's like, the TVA is lying to you. He's like, yeah, I didn't want to listen to him, and basically left him in a loop where Sylph is slapping him and kneeing him nearly the groin because of, like, right, you cut her hair, and he's just stuck in there. Which I love it because I'm like, for one, it's like, this is her first appearance since Dark World. You also have to think about, I don't know when I would assume Dark World came out after her appearance on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because she popped up in a one episode thing in the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Because I know, like, episode 9 takes place after Dark World, so Dark World would have been at some point in time. So I think technically Dark World is her last appearance MCU wise, but I think the episode she was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. aired before that, or I could be mistaken. But it's still not. It's been going on 8 years-ish, and it's like, oh, it's nice to see you back. Even if it's in a small role, it's still neat because it puts you back in the MCU, and also means still could do something with her in the future. Because it was like because she was not in Ragnarok. Because once again, my thought process is probably like, she probably couldn't be in Ragnarok because at the time she was doing Blind Spot, the TV shows, probably scheduling issues, maybe not, I don't know. But it's nice to see her kind of, I hope this isn't the last time we still see her. I hope we do get to see her in, like, Love and Thunder or something like that, make her, like, return appearance, because Blind Spot has subsequently ended, so her scheduling might be a little bit more open to allow for that. I don't know. Once again, I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know anything, obviously. I'm surmising. But it's sad that that's kind of on the loop over and over again. And when he tries to break the loop, she still hits him. And again, I'm like, you actually expected something to be different this time? It's a hell loop for a reason. I think it is interesting how that loop worked too, because it eventually had to end with him apologizing. But even then, when he did apologize, it didn't necessarily end. It was because Mobius showed up later on and kind of ended things. But for him, it's like, you're right. I crave attention because I'm afraid that basically, I'm going to end up all alone, which Sif still says, you are all alone and you always will be. And I think that's kind of potentially the sad reality of all Lokis to a certain extent. It's just like, but it is sad to, like, right, that's why children act out, because they're not they want more attention, and it's like, that's how children kind of, so the psychology behind it's really interesting to dissect Loki to be like, yeah, that's why he became the villain he is, why he is the god of mischief. The argument could be like, well, especially when the timeline, when it's kind of made to seem like, oh, every version of Loki is meant to be a loser, because that was a whole other thing too of like, right, every Loki is meant to lose, but for Loki it's like, yeah, but even then we never die. That was an interesting line. I mean, there have been plenty of fake outs in the MCU to kind of confirm that as well, but which it kind of runs with the theory that some people have had about, are we going to start messing with Endgame in a sense that, like, right, we think Loki died in Endgame, but in actuality he didn't, or like he shifts or changed something at the end of this season to make it so that he's actually still alive in Endgame in some shape or form. I don't know. That was kind of a running theory, like earlier on in the show, which that might still be a theory kind of ringing around, you know, the internet or whatever, but I don't know. It seems like that statement in particular, like we never die, makes it seem like that might be the case. Might be even hinting to other stuff as well, but we'll get to that. A line I think is really interesting and I found fascinating was like Mobius being like, yeah, you know, we've brought in Kree, Titans, and vampires. I'm like, okay, cool. I guess it's like, all right, you're not going to see them, but we're acknowledging vampires in MCU. How are we going to get there? Don't worry about it. We'll get to that when Blade comes out. But just know, because we know Blade is coming at some point in time, most likely in Phase 5, maybe, we're going to go ahead and mention it. Vampires. Well, you know it's coming up eventually, so we could throw that out there, you know. I just like that. It's just like, oh, it's interesting that this is where the V word gets dropped. I find it funny because it's like, right, Blade isn't the first thing that gets to drop the V word. I mean, I guess the argument also is like, well, it's not the MCU, but it's MCU adjacent to a certain extent because, like, Mobius is going to come out, and that's, you know, he's the living vampire. So, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's also the reason why they're so okay with dropping it, because, like, even before Blade even gets here, there's also Mobius, so, like, this Marvel vampire stuff, it's not too out there to a certain extent. I don't know. Once again, we don't even know what the hell was going to go down in Mobius with all of that. I keep saying Mobius. It's Morbius. I kept saying it wrong because I was like, no, that's because God. Morbius is what I meant. Sorry. I meant Morbius. I screwed that all up. But you get what I'm trying to say. I just think that's interesting. But what is really fascinating is that Ravonna kept Mobius from... he's like, no, let me get to Sylvie. He's like, even saying, like, maybe if I attack both of them, and in the sense of, like, if I interrogate both of them, then we'll get a bigger picture. But she's like, no, stay away from her. She's dangerous. It's like, so just stick to your Loki, and it's like, and that'll be that. And so he does. And obviously it turns out, like, Mobius isn't really listening to anything Loki says, because he's like, all right, like, I will tell you everything if you let me go. And he's like, oh, yeah, the whole thing about the TVA line to me. Yeah, sure. Whatever you say, buddy. And, I thought it was fascinating, the back and forth that they have, and even to the point Loki just kind of gives in. He's like, you know what? You're right. It's me. I'm the mastermind. Like, I met it with her on Asgard, and we planned everything. And it's like, oh yeah, this grand plan. Oh, you don't even know what's coming. Like, it's already set in motion and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, sure. Really quickly too, like, we never actually saw it, but I guess in that time frame in between, like, episode 2 and 3, they managed to, like, put all those genies back in the bottle. I guess they were able to jump on that as quickly as possible. Because, like, all those because when you look at the timeline, all those next events that she set off, I mean, they were meant to mainly be distractions. So that, while they were so distracted, like, their forces were thin at the TVA, she could get to the timekeepers, I guess. God thought her plan was just, you know, but that's all it was. It was just meant to be a distraction. She probably knew it wasn't going to go successful because they're too on top of that stuff, no matter how widespread it was. But that's so interesting. That's something interestingly to know. I guess that just showcases how many TVA agents there are. The fact that they were able to stop all those timelines, or maybe there's more to it. But I feel like that's kind of suggesting that they stopped all the time. Like, we never gotten an answer to that. That the only Nexus event that was started was them at the beginning of the episode. But regardless. But then, like, it's like, you know, Loki's playing along. I'm circling back. Loki's playing along. He's like, you know, when it's all said and done, like, you know, we'll prune her. And it's like, oh, no, it's already done. What? Yeah, she's gone. And he's like, wait, she's gone? And then in that moment, he's sad. And then Mobius is like, really? you like her? He's like, and then he basically kind of makes the argument I brought last episode, because I'm not the only one. Plenty of other people were like, oh, do I want Loki and Loki together? It's like, yeah, like it is strange how well they work together, but the argument is, well, they're kind of the same person. But it's also, you get existential in that, because it's like, is it really falling for yourself when it's a different version? Because it's not the exact version of yourself. Like that, she's led a completely different life. They shared some similarities, but their lives have heavily diverse. So you can make the argument, are they even the same people? It's not as like, the word I kept using last time was masturbatory. The word Mobius used, it's narcissistic. Same thing, but it's like, right, it's like, it's not as narcissistic. I mean, it is to a certain extent, because it's still a Loki, but at the same time, it's like, it's a very different Loki, because it's not the same person. Because even Loki is like, no, I don't like her. Like, she's so infuriating and dealing with it. It's like, yeah, all the words people would use to describe you. But obviously, Mobius is kind of poking fun of him, being like, how narcissistic you have to be that you end up finding and liking someone that's exactly like you. But it's like, tell me, is she alive? It's like, yes, she's alive for now. So get back to it. And obviously Loki kept beating around the bush, because obviously for him it's like, fine, I'll throw you back in there in the loop. And he just finally breaks. He's like, you're a variant. He's like, what? He's like, you are a variant. Everyone in the TVA is. The timekeepers have lied to all of you. But Mobius doesn't believe him. And he's just like, yeah, you spent the past like 10 minutes lying to me, so why should I believe you now? He's like, I'm telling the truth now. Boy cried wolf type of situation. But as they're being dragged away, he's like, that was I forgot what the exact wording was. It was like, oh, that's the biggest lie of all, or something like that. And Mobius is like, what? You're talking about the fact is I lied to you about her? It's like, no, that I can respect. But the fact is that you're lying to yourself. And Mobius takes that to heart, because he eventually goes and meets with Ravonna, because they're shutting down the case, because this is supposed to be, case closed. At the same time, B-15 meets with Sylvie, and it's like, takes her to Rock's cart. It's like, what was that? Did you plant? It's like, no, I didn't plant those memories. I can't create memories. I only manipulate what's already there. Those are your memories. You're a variant, just like me. And then she said, can you show me more? And she showed her more, and she's like, I was happy, And it's like, where do we go from here? It's so interesting, because she was like the first like adversarial character introduced in the show, B-15, and for her to kind of be on the side of them. I mean, because she's a variant herself. So now knowing that truth, because you could tell like it was already breaking through even before she went to see Sylvie, because she was looking at the propaganda that is the time variance, and it just bothered the hell out of her, because it's like, right, what's going on here? Like everything, I mean, what you believe to be the truth is an entire lie. I mean, it's so crazy that this didn't just turn into a time show. This turned into a straight thriller suspense conspiracy. That's where it really gets nuts, that this turned into a whole conspiracy thing. It's pretty wild. But at the same time, like I said, Mobius was talking to Renova, and she's like, oh, like Ravonna, and it's like, oh, where would you go if you could go anywhere? He's like, no, I actually can go any place anywhere. It's like, I enjoy being here doing the work with you. She's like, all right, But then he starts asking too many questions. She's like, almost being like, oh, you're spending too much time with the Lokis. He's like, you're right, I have been around too many Lokis. But it's like, the way she's dodging a lot of that stuff. It's like, what about C20? She seemed fine at one moment, and then all of a sudden you're saying she's, no, it went that quickly. It's like, fine, you want the truth? The truth is that, right, that variant, she scares me, and I didn't want to put anyone in danger, just like C20. And it's like, right, it's like, yeah, that's that's the truth. It's like all the truth. He kind of added that, and she's like, kind of wondering where it's all coming from, but he kind of dodges that, and he switches those telepaths with hers and leaves. And he gets away, and he looks at the interview from her, because it says she's deceased, and she talks about, right, I'm a variant, I remember my life down there. And then he sees on the recording Ravonna came and stopped it. It's like, now he knows what Loki said was true. So he goes to get Loki and everything, and I'm like, oh, he's like, all right, do you care about her? And he's like, I mean, I don't know. It's like, do you? Because it's like, now it's like, once again, his entire world is upside down. Because this had also, I don't know if I brought this up last episode, but this kind of confirms, because that also, I might have brought that up that episode, I don't know, about the whole, like, why he's so obsessed with jet skis, because the time he's from, that was maybe some part of his memory or his personality of who he was before is still there, and that's what that represents. But he goes to pull Loki out, it's like, because he's saying, like, in case no one ever said it to you before, you can be good, like that, that you're not just like set in stone of being just the Loki that you are. You have a chance to be good. And it's like, it's like Loki being like, yeah, trust me, I'm telling you the truth as a friend, So it's like, all right, let's get out of here. And it's like, just as they leave, Ravona's waiting. It's like, okay. He's like, hey, I didn't know we switched those. And it's like, oh boy. And it's like, he's like, where I would like to go? I'd like to go back to the life you took from me. And they're like, oh boy. And then he gets pruned. I was like, no. I was like, that's the most horrible thing. I was like, you couldn't have. And then Loki, you see him so pissed. Like, because the last time you saw Loki kind of this upset, like, it just being like, he was just like, you hurt, my friend is dead. Because for him, the last time once again, like, I referenced it like last episode, like when you've seen Loki really like, the last time you saw that was during Dark World. That was the last time he was like that, like after his mom died. And for him, it's just the entire time he's silent, he doesn't fight back, but he's kind of just standing still because he's bubbling underneath, just so infuriated. Ravonna goes and visits Sylvie and sees that she's like that smirk on her face. Is like, who's the last person in here? B-15, sir. It's like, put an alert out for her. And it's like, right, I'm going to take both of these guys up. And then Sylvie's like, right, so there had to be a nexus point that led to me becoming a variant. What was it? And she was like, and she being so smug about it, being like, I don't remember. She definitely remembers. Or maybe who knows? I mean, that's the thing. Either she's lying because just to screw Sylvie over, just to like, mess of her head, or legitimate she doesn't remember because there have been so many things that it's like, right, we just come in, like they've done this hundreds, no, probably more likely thousands, probably tens of thousands of times, so they're not going to remember every single variant, which is sad considering they are one. Or whatever Ravonna's situation is, we don't know what it is. I think she is a variant. I think she's a variant that decided to kind of take over this operation, if this operation really was real to begin. Who knows? But we meet the timekeepers, like, all right, this is where we find out the BS. But then there's guards nearby too. And I'm like, oh, so it can't be complete BS. And then it's like, oh, we had the 3 talking lizards. Okay, that's interesting. And obviously both of them are confronting them about like, okay, they're like, oh, you're kind of nothings. You're just a chaotic nothing in the sacred timeline. But it's like, no, like for you to go through the trouble bringing us before you and everything means you're afraid of us. But then B-15 shows up to back them up and turns into a brawl. Sylvie getting her one-on-one time with Ravonna. The moment she just knocked her out, I was like, oh boy, that's going to come back to bite them in the ass. Didn't play out the way I thought it would, but they end up knocking one of the heads of the guys off, and it's like, oh, it's a robot. It's like, the irony behind that, because there's that whole machine of like, trying to it's like, oh, let us know if you're a robot, and it's like, oh, it turns out these guys are robots. I was like, I guess that's supposed to be like the irony behind it and stuff like that, but they're all automated androids, so it's like, all right, so if they're not, and especially for Sylvie, because she's been planning this for years, trying to attack them, and it's like, right, they're not even the heads of the serpents when it comes to this thing. So it's like, what is this all about? Who's actually running this thing? I would have, once again, some of the theories that's kind of gotten thrown out there, and I'm curious, is Kang, like, because once again, I didn't know this, but just hearing people's different discussions, people brought up the fact is that Ravonna in the comic books is either his current girlfriend or what was Kang's girlfriend or like ex-girlfriend or something like that. So some people are wondering like if this is kind of going to directly tie into like Quantumania, Eminent Noir's Quantumania in that regard, because he's supposed to be the main antagonist, where he'll probably won't make an actual appearance, but maybe we'll hear Kang's name or it'll kind of allude to him. Maybe not, I don't know. But it's like, yeah, you've spent your years hunting this mission, and it's like you thought you were so close to the top, everything you've done to get to this point, and it's like, right, you still haven't even made it to the top, and you're no closer to figuring out, you're kind of back to square one because you have no idea who's actually running things. Like I said, I'm assuming the Kang thing, but it does seem like Ravonna is the only, because she's the only one that's in the know about everything. So But in that moment, Loki's kind of saying like, because them being together is special because it created a nexus point. Because for one, it's two Lokis fighting each other, but it's also like potentially true love. I was almost like, okay, Loki. I was like, oh, Ravona's gonna like delete her or something. I was like, oh, that's gonna be the most heartbreaking thing. But I was like, he grabbed her shoulder. I was like, go ahead, do it, Loki. Kiss her, Loki. And then he gets pruned. I was like, no. You took Mobius from us, and now you took Loki? I was like, wait, this can't be happening. And instead of, like, pruning Ravonna, Sylvie's like, no, give me answers. And I'm like, okay. And the way the episode was shaping up, like, I was like, no, that can't be the end of the episode. And it ended up being the end. I was like, no! Because most times, like, I'll have to pause the episode for some reason, so I'll always know, like, how much, be roughly expecting when the show is going to end, just because I know how much time is left. I didn't see the timer this entire episode, so when it came, it actually hit me. I was like, oh, that was so fast, because I didn't look at the timer once the entire episode, because I didn't have to pause, but man, I was like, no way. Even before, as we're going through the credits, I was like, no way, this can't be. I was like, could this potentially be them replacing Loki with, Lady Loki with Sylvie? I was like, is that what? No. I was like, no, they're not. They can't have gotten rid of like Mobius. They can't get rid of Owen Wilson. I was like, there's no way they did that. Because also, it's like, for one, even if Sylvie met another Loki, that dynamic would be lost. It'd be a little bit like certain aspects of Fringe. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to get into it for spoiler reasons, but I was wondering if they were kind of doing something like that. I mean, hell, Legacies kind of does that to a certain extent with the whole Malivore thing. If you've watched Legacies, you know what I'm trying to reference. But I was like, oh, you'd be kind of starting fresh if she ran into another Loki, because it wouldn't be the same Loki. I was like, no. They got to be, maybe they're not dead. Maybe they're just like somewhere else. And then we get the mid-credits thing, and it's like, okay, he wakes up, he's like, am I dead? And it's like, you will be soon if you don't come with us. And we see 3 other Lokis. I think could we see his name at the end is Richard E. Grant playing the older Loki. I think he's the Loki in the more traditional comic book outfit, which I was like, interesting. So my thought process is this is like a time dump, in the sense that this is like where all things that get quote unquote pruned, things don't get deleted, they just get moved, I think. So maybe not just people, but maybe things as well. That there's probably no way to properly delete anything from a timeline, which would be crazy to think about, considering like if everything you've ever pruned basically warped into this dead zone. Maybe this is like a special dead zone where like nothing affect, like there's no past or future. It's just this one moment in time. Maybe it's kind of like a pocket dimension, but like one particular moment in time that acts as a pocket dimension that it's just supposed to be like graveyard for all things pruned. So I think Mobius is going to be there. Everything they've ever done, all the timelines. Maybe this is the world everything just ends up. Or maybe it's just the people. Maybe it's not things in the timeline and stuff, but maybe it's just specifically people. I don't know. But it's like, okay, Loki's alive. That must mean Mobius is alive too. It's like, yeah, we get to keep that friendship alive. Okay, good. Woo, I'm happy about that. But this sets up some interesting developments of what's in store for us next. I'm very, very excited to see where all of this takes us. Like, dude, we only got 2 episodes left, and we're already at this point of like, yep, the TVA is complete and utter BS. The Timekeepers are BS. Maybe they were at one point in time real, and then because that's the thing. Like, maybe someone was running things before Ravonna found out, and then she just took out. She perpetuated the lie. It's like kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Like, oh, like don't look at the man behind the curtain, and she found the man behind the curtain, killed him, and took over to being the person behind the curtain. Maybe that's what that was. Because I doubt because once again we saw it, she was a hunter, so she adopted this from somebody else. This was already happening. Not unless, like I said, not unless she was like, you know what, I'm tired of the Timekeepers, I'm gonna run things my way. Like maybe they were just too chaotic with things. They were just letting things slip and slide, and now it's like, no, I'm gonna be the. Because that's also the thing too of like, who let you? I mean, I was about to say, who lets you be the judge, jury, and executioner? You are the judge and everything. But once again, I'm like, everyone's supposed to stay in their station. So why is it that you became the judge? It's like, oh, because I gave myself a raise. I'm top dog around here because she's the only one that interacts with the Timekeepers and everything. I mean, they're animatronic and everything. I don't know. man, this conspiracy runs so deep. I'm so fascinated to get some answers to this Loki circumstance. Well, all the Lokis. Where all that's going to take us. I'm so curious to see how this is all going to play out. I hope it's kind of like a happy ending. I hope like Loki and Sylvie get together. I get the feeling like it's going to be like a sad thing. They won't, but who knows how this is all fully going to play out. To anyone that's curious, there was the mid-season trailer. I avoided that like the plague. I've avoided because there's some places that are talking about it, like some of the places I listen to discussions. I'm like, I kind of don't want to know. So some of those discussions I'm going to have to go back once the season's over because I don't want to even spoil anything for myself because I'm one of those people who watch trailers but not like TV show trailers like for like the next episode. I try to avoid those, and especially mid-season trailers. Like the TV trailers that came the trailers that came out beforehand are enough for me. I just don't want to know what's coming up next. I can theorize and guess, but I'm trying to avoid. That's why, like I said, I avoided the mid-season trailer like crazy. So yeah, that's just. To anyone that's curious, because I'm sure there's some people who might be like, nah, I need to like have some idea of what's coming next, which perfectly fine. Like I said, it's just me. It's just a me thing. I've avoided it like crazy. But yeah, I'm really interested to see where all this takes us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.